Check out our sponsor, JM Bullion, right now, the most trusted dealer in precious metals, offering a wide selection of products including silver and gold coins from all of the government mints. Free shipping for AMTV subscribers.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television. In today's video, I'm going to explain why more than likely you've never heard the name Dillon Taylor. You see, just days after the tragic shooting of Michael Brown, a black man who was 18 years old and over 300 pounds, who had also robbed a liquor store just moments before he was shot at by a police officer in a very violent altercation. Another man who was 20 years old named Dillon Taylor in Salt Lake City, Utah, was also shot. But many of you have never even heard the name Dillon Taylor, nor has the mainstream media been propelling a message of the tragedy that makes up the death of Dillon Taylor, who was shot by a police officer. And the question is why? And you should be asking yourself that question right now, folks. Why haven't I heard the name Dillon Taylor, but I've heard the name Michael Brown? Repeatedly. There's been riots in the streets of Ferguson, Missouri. Members of the Obama administration, whether or not it's Eric Holder, Fast and Furious Eric Holder, or other White House officials attending the funeral. We have the Reverend Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson attending really what looked like a spectacle the other day, honoring the tragedy and the death of Michael Brown. But many of you have never heard the name Dillon Taylor, and the question begs, why? Why hasn't CNN and Wolfie Blitzer, one of my favorite hosts, been talking about the tragic killing of Dillon? Just a kid, 20 years old, shot dead by a cop in the city streets of Salt Lake. Why hasn't there been a public outcry? Why hasn't there been hashtags invented for Dillon? You know, put your hands up, peace, love. Why haven't we had any of this in America? Why haven't we heard the name? You see, folks, the reason why you haven't heard the name Dillon Taylor is because Dillon Taylor, who was described as Caucasian and Latino, was shot by a black cop 2 days after the Michael Brown shooting. You see, Dillon was white, and the cop that shot him, black. And you see, in this country, that doesn't fill the narrative being pushed by the mainstream media. Again, Rush Limbaugh, I think, said it best the other day. He said that as a white man in our present-day politically bullshit correct society, I'm kind of filling in my own verbiage there, he said it's almost impossible to be viewed as a victim as a white man. You can only be viewed in terms of the liberal biased media as an oppressor as a white man, and the black man only viewed as a victim. And it's exactly why, likely, you've never heard the name Dillon Taylor, because Dillon Taylor was white, and he was shot by a black cop. Now, Dillon was also unarmed, for God's sakes, unarmed and shot dead. He also had a shoddy and kind of a shoddy criminal track record. In fact, there was a likelihood he was going to spend some time in jail, just like Michael Brown, who robbed a liquor store. And many witnesses on the ground said he actually attacked the police officer, who suffered an ocular fracture and a swollen eye after the shots rang out, allegedly in self-defense. Again, there's been no trial yet, but there has been a trial in the eyes of the mainstream media, the liberal, biased mainstream media. But not for Dillon Taylor, because he's white. And the cop that shot him, black. There was no riots in Salt Lake City, just kind of a measly, talk and a little bit of a protest down maybe at the courthouse. But, there wasn't race riots. People weren't looting the local QT. They weren't robbing the Walmart and other stores. The liquor store manager wasn't fearing for his life, fearing that he would be murdered, even though he was the victim in the Michael Brown case, because people want to ignite this race war and want to push this liberal media biased message. And you see, that's the point, folks. In fact, statistically, black-on-black crime and black-on-black death is more likely to occur than white-on-black, or even black-on-white for that matter. But you'll never hear those statistics in the mainstream media because there's an agenda for a race war. It's exactly what the great uniter Barack Hussein Obama has been about since the days of his community organizing and his hope and change speech before we had the riots in Ferguson, Missouri, and he started bombing Iraq. And now soon to be bombing places like Syria. See, it's an agenda to divide and conquer the American people. And clearly it's a double standard. In fact, I was one of the first to ask this question with a very testy video that people accused me of being racist just for asking the question. I said, and I asked this before this story even came out, what would happen and would there still be riots and protests in the streets like in Ferguson, Missouri, if Michael Brown happened to be white and the cop was black that shot him? And the answer to that question is an obvious no. And it's an obvious no in the case of Dillon Taylor. Because many of you have never heard of him. An unarmed Caucasian and Latino male shot by a black cop. Unbelievable, folks. I mean, shouldn't there be outrage in the streets right now? Shouldn't CNN and Wolfie Blitzer with his cute little beard be all over this? Shouldn't the black community be up in arms? Why isn't Reverend Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson in the streets of Salt Lake City today? Why? Because it's a double standard. And the way I see it, and many Americans see it, although they might be afraid to say it, is reverse discrimination here in the United States of America. A clear double standard is present. Again, you can only be an oppressor as a white man, according to the mainstream media, and only a victim as a black man in this country, not the other way around, as was the case with Dillon Taylor. Now, obviously, the good people out there, the good Caucasians, the good African Americans of all colors, polka dot, purple, green, blue, who really cares? Really intelligent people know that already. But the dumb shits rioting and looting the streets of Ferguson, Missouri today, and the mainstream media controlled by the statist agenda that makes up public opinion is pushing their narrative. They're making this a part of public conversation. You know, this is the truth, folks, and it's important that we recognize not just the death of Michael Brown, but Dillon Taylor, somebody that likely you've never heard of. A white, Caucasian, 20-year-old male, also Latino, described Latino, who was tragically shot by a black police officer just 2 days after the tragic shooting of Michael Brown. Very sad, but it's the ugly truth. I'm Christopher Green. Get this video out everywhere. Share it far and wide, hard-hitting it in your face, and click the link below to support our sponsor.